Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn the Rashis and Masechta Shabbos on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph and Daf Zayin Amud Beis. Let's begin. Bein Amudim. The Gemara discussed that the area Bein Amudim, between the pillars and the Itztabayis, the benches, are a carmelis. So Rashi will explain what is Bein Amudim and what are the Itztabayis. Shehayu Amudim, because there were pillars, Beruchava, in the road, V'teilim behem at-tagarim, and the merchants would hang on them pragmatia merchandise. The gamitz tabois, and also benches, hayu lefneim, the fneim were in front of them, in front of the pillars, leishiv shamatagarim, for the merchants to sit there. So we explained that the reason why Bein Amudim is a carmelis, because loy mistagalu behedya, they don't walk there openly. People can't walk there in a very comfortable way. The reason is shahayu amudim harbe, because there were a lot of pillars, ba'irich v'reichav, along the length and width, v'zeh shalei keneged zeh, and one not opposite the other. They were set up in a random way. People couldn't walk over there comfortably. The Gemara then presented a case of a levena, a brick. Says Rashi, stam levena arko rechava gimel, a regular brick. Its length and width is 3 tfachim. Ve'ein la'avya shir, and its thickness doesn't have a set size. It doesn't have a set shear. Yesh mehen avis, there are of them that are thick. V'yesh mehen dakas, and there are of them that are thin. And like we explained in our Gemara, since the brick is 3 by 3, therefore the area on top of it is a makim p'tor, and we're talking about a brick that's more than 3 tfachim off the ground. So he said if somebody threw an item at that brick, v'tachal ponel, and it stuck to its face, how could that be? Says Rashi, could go in, for example, dvela shmena, like a fatty fig, oy tit, or cement or clay that would stick to the brick. So the din is chayev, the person is chayev. Im zarak dal amas, if you threw the item 4 amas in Rosh Hashanah, and the reason is to have a kemunach Rosh Hashanah, for it's like it's resting in Rosh Hashanah. The chol mata miyud, because anything that's lower than 10 tefachim, Rosh Hashanah, who is a Rosh Hashanah, uvel vad, and as long, and just as long sheyanuach, that it rests oyle mata megimel, either lower than 3 tefachim, the havik karka, that it's like the ground. We said anything within 3 tefachim of the ground, it's like it's on the ground. So either it has to be within 3 tefachim of the ground, or in the ear, ki like this that stuck to the wall. Like we say later on in the Mishnah. We say later on in the Mishnah that we present in our piece of Gemara of Zayin Amud Beis. Hazerik dal amas b'kaisel. Somebody throws 4 amas on a wall, and it's referring to that it's stuck to the wall. Lamata miyut tefachim. If it's lower than 10 tefachim, kazerik ba'artz, like he threw it on the ground. V'chayiv and is chayiv. So Rashi explains to us over here that the ear of Rosh Hashanah extends up to 10 tefachim, and what does that mean? That anything stuck to a wall within 10 tefachim will be considered that it's in the Rosh Hashanah. Now Rashi is going to ask and answer a question. V'chi amar lamata miyud b'reichav dalad karmelis. And when did he say that when it's lower than 10 tefachim and it's 4 by 4 tefachim wide, it's a carmelis? We know that a carmelis is anything that's more than 3 tefachim high, less than 10 tefachim high, so between 3 and 10, and it's 4 by 4 tefachim wide. Ucheshe'ein rachav dalan, if it's not 4 by 4 tefachim wide, makom p'tor, it's a makom p'tor. So how can we say that Rosh Hashanah extends up to 10 tefachim? We know that from 3 to 10, it's either a carmelis or a makom p'tor. Says Rashi, Hainu b'tash mishamasoyim. When did he say this? That's with something that has a set use. Kegoin gav levena, like the back of a brick, the top of a brick. V'rosh kaisel, on the top of a wall. Oy amud, or the top of a post. Dahani mistayim tashmishisayu, that they have a set use. In other words, it's an entity for itself, it's a reshus for itself. So therefore there we're saying that between 3 and 10, it's above 3, so it's removed from the Rishus Harabim. Up to 10, it's a separate Rishus. Aval Aver, but the ear, Kigain Pnei HaKaisel, like the face of a wall. So it's not an item for itself, it's not a brick on top of the brick, but rather it's the side of the brick or the side of the wall. So there, Davar Nidbik, by something that sticks to it, have a Rishus Alanavshe. It's not a Rishus for itself, the face of a wall. Rather, if it's lower than 10 tefachim, have a Rishus Harabim Gomer, it's a complete Rishus Harabim. And if it's higher than 10 tefachim, the loy shalti be'rabim, where the public doesn't control there, which means they don't use that area, it's higher than 10 tefachim, have a avira ba'alma makim p'tor, it's ear alone, which is a makim p'tor. Kedetnan, like we said in the Mishnah, when somebody threw something at the wall, he threw 4 amas in Rishus Harabim, and it stuck to the wall, we said, l'mayla miyut tefachim, if it's higher than 10 tefachim, kazerik ba'aver is like throwing in the ear, upater and he's pater. So Rashi explained over here just briefly that the whole idea that the Rishus Harabim extends up to 10 tefachim and not more than 10 tefachim is referring to the face of something, like the face of a wall. However, if it's actually a separate item and it rested on top of it, then it's a different din. It might be a carmelis, it might be a makom p'tor. Higher than 10 tefachim would possibly be a Rishus HaYachid or a makom p'tor. So if it's 4 by 4 tefachim wide it'll be a karmelis up to 10 tvachim. If it's less than 4 by 4 tvachim wide, it'll be a mokem ptur. And if it's higher than 10 tvachim, if it's 4 by 4 tvachim wide, it'll be a rishus hayachid. And if it's less than 4 by 4 tvachim wide, it'll be a mokem ptur. So he said al gaba on top of it patur. If it rested on the brick, the person's patur. Kedemukila abaye v'rava, like abaye and rava, establish it. The begavaya gimel, it's when it's 3 tfachim high. The leidarsi barabim, that the public don't walk there. The hava mokim latzma, it's a place for itself, and we know what type of place for itself is it. Since it's only 3 by 3 tfachim, it's less than 4 by 4, so therefore it's a mokim ptor. So the Raya and Bayan Rava said it has to be higher than 3 tfachim unless it's hizmi and higi. What's hizmi and higi? Says Rashi, hizmi, he brings the French word for it, and higi, again, he brings the French word for it. It's different types of thorns. Over there we say afagav the loigavaya gimel, even if it's not the height of 3 tfachim, have a mokim potter la'atzma. It's a mokim potter for itself, and the reason is the leidarse barabim alei, because the public don't step on it shalei zeiku, in order that they shouldn't get harmed. And then we brought the opinion of Chia bar Rav, who said afilu hizmi v'higi. Chia bar Rav said even hizmi and higi. What does that mean? The darsi alei v'sandalei, and they do walk on it with their sandals, and therefore even there, if it has to be above 3 tefachim to be removed from the rishus harabim, because otherwise people will stand and walk on it because they have shoes. Avotsaya, but feces, afagav the leikavaya, even if it's not high, if it's not 3 tefachim high, still a darse Allah, people do not walk on it. Rav Ashi Amar, and Rav Ashi said afilu tzaya, even feces, people will walk on it, and therefore only if it's 3 tefachim high is it considered removed from the rishus harabim. Hachi garsinon ein karmelis pchusa medalad. We brought down a teaching that a karmelis is not less than 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide. Says Rashi, what's pchusa medalad? What we're referring to is reichav, the width. V'ilayin, if not, if it doesn't have the width of 4 by 4 tefachim, mokim p'torhu, it's a mokim p'tor. Umutter l'chatchila, and it's mutter l'chatchila laheitzi misham, to carry out from this area that's less than 4 by 4 tefachim wide, l'rishus harabim, to rishus harabim, u'l'rishus yachid, and to rishus yachid. V'tefeses, and it grabs or captures, it extends, begoiva, and its height, ad yud, it's up till 10 tvachim. Ulakame mefarish, and then later the Gemara is going to explain what is this referring to in its height. The Gemara said, what does it mean with its height is up to 10? V'tefeses adasara. If you're going to say the iika mechitza yud chulu, if there's a wall that's 10 tvachim, then it's a karmelis. Is that what it means when it says up to 10? Kegain, for example, bika, an area of fields, hamukefes gadar, that's surrounded by a fence, v'yasera al beis asayim, and it's larger than 2 sa'ah. A hook full of deer, and it wasn't surrounded for a residence. Maybe that's the area that's a karmelis. It's an area of fields, and there's a wall around it, and it wasn't put there for a house, because if it's there for a house, then it's a rishus hayachid. In that area, we know a person can't carry more than 4 amas, because we give it the din of a karmelis. Maybe the requirement is that the walls have to be 10 tefachim high. Maybe that was the teaching of Rav Sheshis. The walls need to be 10 tefachim high. But we know that's not true. We learned the teaching that says a house that's 9 tefachim inside, or less than 10, and the roof makes it 10, v'keriyoi mashlime, and its roof completes it, oivikiroi, referring to the thickness of its roofing. So the inside of the house is less than 10 tefachim, and the thickness of the roof gives it the height of 10 tefachim. The din is al gagay, on its roof, the gavaya yud, which is 10 tefachim high. Have a rishus hayachid is a rishus hayachid, umutir l'tadabel kulei, and one may carry in the whole thing. But within the house, a person cannot carry except within 4 amas. It should be ela bedalad, only except in 4 amas. The cave and the legavaya mechitza, because since the enclosure isn't 10 tefachim high, legavaya mechitza yud, it's not 10 tefachim high. Have a karmelis, it's a karmelis. So alma ibchash aminon, we see the total opposite. We were trying to interpret that the walls need to be 10 tefachim high to make a karmelis. Here we see the opposite. That in the house, since the walls are not 10 tefachim high, that's why you can't carry. If there was 10 tefachim high, then it would be permitted to carry, it would become a rishus hayachid. The total opposite of how we wanted to explain that it needs walls that are 10 tefachim high to be a karmelis. So rather we need to explain the ad yud have a karmelis, that up till 10 tefachim it's a karmelis. What does this mean? Avishal bika, the ear of an area of fields, oishal yam, or of an ocean, oishal karfif, or of a karfif, yes, al beis asayim, which is larger than 2 beisa. Toifus is shemai, it keeps its status ad yud till 10 tefachim. That means when we say an area is a karmelis, like a bika, a yam, or a karfif, which is larger than 2 beisa, and it was lay hook full of deer, there's no house there, person can't carry there more than 10 tefachim. It's toifus is shemai, it captures its name, in other words, it retains the name, it keeps its status ad yud up to 10 tefachim. But higher than 10 tefachim over there, ein shem karmelis alavira, there's no status of a karmelis on its ear, but davar shein mesuyim, on something that's not set. So what does that mean? We're saying that it's above 10 tefachim, it won't be a karmelis. What does it mean it's not a karmelis? Something can't rest in the ear. When would this din have any significance in halacha? Somebody threw the item and it rested above 10 tefachim. What did it rest on? If it rested on a new item, that item might be a karmelis. So what does it mean that the area above it is not a karmelis? Kigain, for example, pnei levena, the face of a brick. If there was a very high brick in the karfif, or in the floating on the yam, or in the bikam. Kigain pnei levena, the face of a brick, or the face of a wall, or somebody grabs something out of the ear above 10 tefachim. It's permitted for somebody to carry out of that area that's above 10 tefachim, because it's not a karmelis where it's asur, it's a mokim p'tur, l'rishas hayachid, or l'rishas harabim, to rishas hayachid and to rishas harabim. The ain shem karmelis olav, because there's no status of a karmelis on it. Ki heichi da'aver l'mayla meyud b'rishas harabim, just like the ear higher than 10 tefachim in rishas harabim, lav rishas harabim, who is not a rishas harabim. Ki ditnan l'kamon, like we mentioned this earlier about the Mishnah later on, that l'mayla meyud, if somebody threw it at the wall, we said higher than 10 tefachim, because zerek ba'aver, it's like you threw it in the ear. So gabi karmelis nami, by a karmelis also, lav karmelis, so it's not a karmelis. So Rashi is explaining what it's referring to when we say higher and within 10 tefachim. What does it mean when we're talking about within it is a karmelis and higher it's not? We're not talking about a separate entity in the karmelis that it rested upon, but rather that we're talking about the face of something like a wall. Now Rashi will explain why we can't be referring to anything else. Uvedavar mesuyim, and by a said thing, could go in reish amad, like the top of a post, the gav levena on the top of the brick, lekalu ukma, we can't establish that that's what it's referring to. That those things up to 10 are karmelis, above 10 they're not. And the reason is the i'is be arba, because if there is 4x4 tefachim to it, pshita, it's obvious the lamayla masara layar karmelis, that higher than 10 tefachim, it's not a karmelis. We can't say that it's telling us the karmelis extends up to 10 and not more than 10, and it's referring to something which is in the karmelis, and the top of it is 4x4 tefachim. It's obviously not telling us up to 10 it is a karmelis, and higher it's not. Why not? The i'is be arba, because if it has 4 tefachim, pshita the lamayla masara layar karmelis. It's obvious that it's higher than 10 tefachim, it's not a karmelis. The afilu amid b'rishus harabim, because even a post in the Rishas Harabim with such a dimension, Rishas HaYachid was a Rishas HaYachid. V'ida les be'arba, and if it doesn't have 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, ulamata masara, and within 10, mi have a karmelis, is it ulamata masara, and within 10 tefachim, mi have a karmelis, will it be a karmelis? Ha'ka'amar, but we said, ain karmelis p'chusa marba, there's no karmelis less than 4 tefachim. So he's explaining what we can't be referring to. Why do we have to say it's the face of a wall? We can't say it's a post that's more than 4x4, because then, of course, it's not going to be a karmelis higher than 10. He doesn't need to teach it to us. If it's less than 4x4, then what's he saying? That within 10 it's a karmelis. If it's less than 4x4, within 10 it's not going to be a karmelis. It has to be 4x4 to be a karmelis. So it won't be a karmelis then. The karmelis, if we're going to say it's a post that's less than 4x4, and the reason it's a karmelis is because the area that it's in is a karmelis. If it's that it's in a karmelis, and since it doesn't have 4x4, have a shema karmelis, although since it's so small, it doesn't have large area to it, the karmelis status is on it. We found something, a stringency in the karmelis over Rishas Harabim. Because whereas in Rishas Harabim, ki hai gavna, in such a case, Makim P'tur hu batel, it's a Makim P'tur and it's batel. In Rishas Harabim, if there is an item that's higher than 3 tefachim, but less than 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide, it'll be a Makim P'tur. And it'll be permitted for somebody to carry from there to the Rishas Harabim into Rishas HaYachid. And it'll come out that by the karmelis, this area will be a karmelis. So in the Rishus Harabim, this area will be a mokim p'tur. And in the karmelis, it'll be a karmelis. And we said b'shmaitin in our Gemara later on, the haite feses adyud, that this din that it goes up to you and not more, mikuli Rishus Harabim was from the leniencies of Rishus Harabim. And here it'll come out that it's stricter than Rishus Harabim. That in the Rishus Harabim, up to 10 will be considered a mokim p'tur if it's less than 4x4. And in the karmelis, it'll be considered a karmelis. The whole idea of up to 10 and not more is supposed to be from the leniencies of a Rishas Harabim. Here it'll come out that it's stricter than the Rishas Harabim. Therefore, it only stands, this teaching, it only stands by the ear, that it's referring to the side of a wall. So Rashi said over here, we'll just briefly explain, is that we can't say it's talking about something that's 4x4, because then higher than 10 tefachim, of course it's not a karmelis. We don't need to teach it. That's going to be a Rishas HaYachid. Because anything that's higher than 10 tefachim and it's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide is going to be a Rishas HaYachid, even if it's a Rishas Harabim. If it's less than 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide, then it won't be a karmelis, because one of the requirements of a karmelis is to be 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide. So it won't be a karmelis up till 10. And if we'll say it will be a carmelis because it's referring to a case that it's in the carmelis, so therefore the name of the carmelis, the status of the carmelis applies to it, we can't say that either, because then it'll come out that a carmelis is stricter than Rosh Hashanah. Because such a situation in Rosh Hashanah would be considered a Makom P'tur, a post in the Rosh Hashanah higher than 3 Tvachim, up to 10, and it's less than 4 by 4 Tvachim wide, will be a Makom P'tur. And here in the carmelis, we're going to say that it's a carmelis. And we know that the whole idea that it goes up to 10 and not more is from the leniencies of Rosh Hashanah. And here it's going to come out that it's stricter. And as a result, we have to explain that it's just referring to the ear. And how can we have a case of the ear? It's talking about that if it lands on the face of a wall or the face of a brick. Then we brought down the teaching of Shmuel to Rav Yehuda. He told him, don't talk about the matters of Shabbos higher than 10 Tvachim. We said, what did he mean when he said, don't talk of the matters of Shabbos above 10 Tvachim? If you'll say, the Ein Rosh Hashanah, Sheletis B'Chatzer, that Rosh Hashanah doesn't apply. It's not Shelet. It doesn't have its application. It doesn't have control, so to speak, in a yard. Ba'aver, in the ear, l'maylam yud higher than 10 tvachim. Ela makom p'tur, who rather higher than 10 tvachim, Rosh Hashanah is a makom p'tur. U'batal af l'gaber Rosh Hashanah, and it's batal even in regard to Rosh Hashanah. In other words, you could carry from it to Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah. If that's what you're going to say, it means that there's no Rosh Hashanah higher than 10 tvachim. But we have a teaching from Rav Chisda, who said, "Nots kana if one stuck a pole, stamei ein rachav daled. A regular one isn't 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim wide. V'zarik, and somebody threw from Rosh Hashanah, from Rosh Hashanah, v'nochal gavav, and it rested on it. The din is chayiv. The person is chayiv. It's not a makom p'tur, because kamunach al gabi karka, it's like it's resting on the ground. The loiboy hanochal al gabi makom daled Rosh Hashanah. Because Rav Chisda, how can we say it's chayiv? It's less than 4 by 4. We need an area of 4 by 4. So we say kimunach al gabi karka. It's like it's resting on the ground. The loiboy hanocha, because he doesn't require a hanocha al gabi makom daled on an area that's 4 by 4 tvachim by Rosh Hashanah in the Rosh Hashanah. Kedem mefarish l'kaime b'shmaitan, like we'll explain later on in our Gemara, in our Sugya. So he's just addressing a side question, which is if it's less than 4 by 4, why is he chayiv? Because Rav Chisda doesn't require an area of 4 by 4 for the hanocha in the Rosh Hashanah. And the reason is because the Rosh Hashanah goes up ad l'rikira until the sky. It says Rashi, kol aver shekeneged Rosh Hashanah. Any ear that's opposite the Rosh Hashanah, it means on top of the Rosh Hashanah. Bein aver chotzer, whether it's the ear of a yard. Bein aver amud, whether it's the ear of a post. Rosh Hashanah rabim gavay yud v'rochav daled. It makes no difference if it's a Rosh Hashanah here, the ear above it, or a Rosh Hashanah that's in the Rosh Hashanah. For example, a post in the Rosh Hashanah Rabim that's 10 tvachim wide and 4 by 4 tvachim wide, that's a Rosh Hashanah. So the ear on top of a yard or the ear on top of this post can neg the opposite it. Ad l'rikia, up to the sky, Shem Rosh Hashanah Olav has the status of a Rosh Hashanah on it. It extends upwards to no end. And that will therefore mean that if there was a high wall and somebody threw an item and it stuck to the wall, and that wall was in the Rosh Hashanah, it'll be chayev, or a high post. So it can't mean that. It can't mean that there's no Rosh Hashanah higher than 10 Tvachim, because we know there is. Ella, rather, what are you going to say? That what did he mean when he said don't talk about the matters of Shabbos above 10 Tvachim? Dein aver Rosh Hashanah l'mayla miyud. That there's no ear of Rosh Hashanah higher than 10 Tvachim. V'hava avira makom p'tur, and its ear is a makom p'tur. Is that what he's saying? Masnisani, that's a Mishnah. V'lam alei l'shmuel lashminin. And why does Shmuel need to teach it to us? Why did he need to teach it? It should be to him. Why did he need to teach it to Rav Yehuda? It's obvious. It's written in a Mishnah. What does it say in the Mishnah? Hazerik dal amas, one who throws 4 amas, b'Rosh Hashanah in a Rosh Hashanah, v'nidbek b'kaisel, and the item got stuck to the wall, to gain dvela shmena, like a fatty fig, could the mukila l'kaman, like we established later on, that it's talking about something which is sticky. So the din is kazerik ba'aver. It's like he threw it in the ear if it's above 10 tvachim. U'potter, and he's potter. The lav Rosh Hashanah noch, because it didn't rest in the Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah nami lehave, and it's also not a Rosh Hashanah ela davar masuyim v'rochav arba, unless it's something which is set and it's 4 by 4 tvachim wide. Rashi is explaining that when it sticks to a wall above 10 tvachim, it's not a Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah only extends up to 10 tvachim. It's not either a Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is only something which is set. For example, a brick, a post, something in a separate entity, and it's 4 by 4. Here we have the side of a wall. It's not something that has its own use. It's not the top of it. So if he threw it above 10 tvachim, he's going to be potter, because he's like throwing it in the ear. If he threw it within 10 tvachim, kazerik ba'aretz, it's like one who throws it on the ground. The chayev and his chayev, the aver Rosh Hashanah, because the ear of a Rosh Hashanah, mishanach mashu havanocha, when it rests on something, when an item rests on something, havanocha, it's anocha. It's considered at rest. It's not the same as when it rests on something specific, which is within 10 tvachim. So Rashi is contrasting the wall when it landed, let's say, at 7 tvachim, or when it landed on an item that's 7 tvachim high. Because that one is considered to be a significant rishus for itself. The brick that's 7 tefachim high is a separate rishus. What will it be? A karmelis and makam ptur. Either a karmelis if it's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide, or a makam ptur if it's less than 4 by 4. Then it won't be anach in rishus rabim. However, the side of a wall, like Rashi explained at length earlier, that will be considered part of the rishus rabim since the rishus rabim is beneath it. So rather, we need to say a karmelis. He's talking about a karmelis. Kid the perishus, like we explained. He said, don't talk about the matters of Shabbos within 10 tefachim was referring to. Don't talk about the matters of Shabbos above 10 tefachim is referring to a karmelis because there's no karmelis above 10 tefachim, like we already explained. And now the Gemara says, "Va'kilu rabbanon." The rabbanon were lenient in it. Says Rashi le'elkai. It's going on earlier on. The Rav Dimi and Rav Sheshis, and Rav Dimi and Rav Sheshis, that they said that the parameters of a karmelis are 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide, and it's up to 10 tefachim wide. The Akilu rabbanon b'karmelis, that the rabbanon were lenient by a karmelis. Hoyel v'yisur midivrein akilu, since it's isurs midrabanon, they were lenient with it. What were the leniences? Mikuli rishus hayachid, v'rishus rabim, from the leniences of a rishus hayachid and rishus rabim. Rashi explains, Rav Dimi yashminan mikuli rishus hayachid. Rav Dimi teaches us from the leniences of a rishus hayachid. Rav Dimi said it has to be 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide. That's the leniencies of rishus hayachid. Ki heichid rishus hayachid leisei pachis mirachav dal. Just like rishus hayachid doesn't exist, it's less than 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide. And somebody brings from Rishus Rabim onto that area that's less than 4 by 4 is pater. So karmelis namelay have a karmelis. It's also not a karmelis if it's less than 4 by 4 tvachim. And it's permitted to carry lechatchila onto this area from Rishus Rabim and from Rishus Hayachid. Rav Sheshis Ashminan, and Rav Sheshis teaches us the milakula Rishus Rabim nami akilubo, that from the leniencies of Rishus Rabim they were also lenient with it. Rav Sheshis says it's only up to 10 tvachim. We did this from Rishus Rabim. The Einet Efeses ba'avir, it doesn't capture. It doesn't keep its status in the ear l'mayla miyud higher than 10 tvachim ki Rishus Hayachid, just like a Rishus Hayachid does. It doesn't do it like a Rishus Hayachid does. Ela malamata miyud, rather it's only lower than 10 tefachim, like the rules of a Rishus Rabim.